Hi everybody, it's Dr. Abby and I am here with Mari Palade. Mari, tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abby, for having me, and thank you everyone for having me. So I am Mari Palade, and I am currently running for family court judge. And how did that happen? I really don't know, honestly.
God knows what he's doing.
God knows, I'm actually happy in my job. I love what I'm doing, but he said it's time to run for office. It's time to get back in there. My heart is for children and families, especially children and families that are broken and they come to the court system, the justice system for help. And it's a travesty to see that they leave worse off, feeling defeated, feeling rejected, feeling condemned. And something in me just stirs up and says, no, that's not right. So it's time to jump in there and make it right, at least for the families that come before me.
Okay, so you said you love your job. Tell me about that. What do you do then?
I am in charge of the whole legal division for the Department of Family Services. Here in Nevada, basically Las Vegas, Clark County, we are 75% of the state. And so being in charge of the whole legal division means that I have about 3,400 children in foster care that are kind of within our jurisdiction. And each of those families, if they receive a substantiation, meaning if the agency finds that they've abused or neglected their child, that family has a right to an appeal. And when they appeal, it goes to me and I conduct the appeal. I rule either in favor of the family and against the hand that feeds me, or if I find that there is sufficient evidence, I rule in favor of the agency. And so it's a tough job, but you know what? It's an opportunity to really focus on how we can serve our families, because if I do uphold the substantiation, what that means is the family will be our agency works with them to wrap around services to try to assist, rehabilitate, reunify families.
A lot of people just don't know about the services that are out there, and
Right.
You're one of these who just know them off the top of your head. You need this, and it's out there and available and free for a lot of them. So they're so lucky to have you. You're like an angel.
No. Well, I wish there were enough services out there for our families. The challenge, especially after the pandemic, is mental health is a crisis. It's right now here in the state of Nevada, especially for our most vulnerable families, our children that have already been subjected to abuse or neglect. They're already traumatized. They need help, and yet we don't have enough services. We don't have enough qualified mental health providers, and if we do, there's wait lists, and there's not enough resources. So we see children coming into care not because the parents are abusing or even neglecting them, but only because the parents don't know what else to do. They need help, they need services, and sometimes the only way to get services is through the Department of Family Services. That needs to change, and I think I'm placed in a position where I see the travesty of our system, and I'm in a position where I can at least make a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, and especially when you get elected, right?
Yes.
Yes, that's wonderful. It's so exciting. And it's exciting to see a Filipino American who is breaking the bamboo ceiling. It's almost like a wonder that you got this way, because what I speak on a lot in what I've found is that so many Filipino Americans, especially the second gens, we were raised in a way to be quiet, submit.
I'm the firstborn, U.S. born. My mom and dad, my dad's an attorney by profession. The Palade lineage are attorneys in the Philippines. My dad is very old-fashioned, very strict. My mom, on the other hand, though, was raised in a very old-fashioned, strict house by my grandpa, who fought in the war, and so he was very strict. So when my mom came here to the States at the age of 9, she was raised here in the States, but with a very strict, domineering father. So my mom made it a point that when she has her firstborn, and I was the firstborn daughter, that she wanted me to experience the life that she didn't get to live. And so growing up, I saw the tension in my household of my dad being very domineering and controlling because I'm the only girl and I'm his princess, and then my mom wanting to give me the freedom but not speaking up to my dad because of the culture. And so I saw that tension, and as the firstborn daughter, I actually am a splitting image of my dad. My dad and I both are tigas ulo. We're both speak up when we want to speak up. And so you can only imagine growing up for me, I grew up speaking my say, but finding the repercussions thereof very quickly. And when I grew up as a child, before boys got in the picture, when I was a little girl, I was daddy's princess. I was spoiled. Everything that I wanted, I got. But once now I started having suitors and boyfriends, all of a sudden it switched, and I was locked in the house and I couldn't leave.
My goodness.
But then I had my mom who wanted me to be a cheerleader, a model, and experience all American life. And so I was fortunate to have my mom advocating for me. So I had cheerleading, I had modeling, I had tennis. Those were my outlets to be able to build my, the other pieces of me, my identity.
And you're so fortunate that way, because there are a lot of Filipino parents who are just kind of like school and home, that's it.
Yeah.
So your mother, and another, like, I guess, phenomenon with your experience is a lot of the second gens that I talked to, their parents came over when they were older, right? Your mom came over when she was 9. So that means she was half raised in the American environment.
Yes.
She saw more of it. She wasn't holding you to the standard that she was still experiencing in the Philippines. She was holding you to something more that she thought you could do, which kind of gives me hope, because it means those of us who were born from immigrant parents who came when they're older, we now will be like your mom, in that we could see the opportunities for our children, and that we could push them to do great things. So
Absolutely.
your mom had you really involved in different things,
did.
and that involvement gives you self-esteem,
Yes.
accomplishment, achievement, even a little bit of competitive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The one thing my dad liked that I do was we all were playing tennis. So I was a competitive tennis player, and so the family competed. But with my mom's help, I was also a cheerleader. So I did tennis, cheerleading, pageants, modeling. So because my mom didn't get to experience any of that, even though she grew up here in the States, my grandpa was very strict and domineering. So because my mom's lack of that experience, she vowed to give that to me. And so I was able to walk away with the opportunity to experience, other things that shape my character, right? Going through the pageants was wonderful, because it allowed me to recognize that I'm not looking at the approval of man, but I'm going forth to be able to just give it my all and give it my best. And it puts me to take risks, because there's risk all over. Cheerleading was risk,
That's
tennis.
really hard.
So it was quite the experience. But the reason why I'm such a avid child advocate is because, I'm gonna get a little personal here, if that's okay, is because even though I was raised with a lot of support from my mom, my dad and I, as I grew older, the tension got worse. And it got to a point that I suffered a very serious accident. I suffered a skull fracture and hemorrhaging of the brain.
Oh my goodness.
I was in the hospital. The doctor said I wasn't going to make it. And that accident, it was a car accident. But when that accident occurred, it was when my dad and I were fighting in the car as he was taking me back to go to finish up my senior year in college. I miraculously made it with my mom's prayers. She was always praying.
Yeah.
But even after the rehab and learning how to walk and talk and do everything again, I don't remember that part of my life. But the long story short is that my father and I still continued with the unhealthy habits of fighting, and it got to a point that it was now very unhealthy for me. I had to talk to my neurologist, who I begged to allow me to just fly back to San Diego to finish up my senior year in college. And the neurologist looked at me and he said, "Dear, what's the rush? You're so young." And I said, "Because I need to go to law school, and I'm going to be an attorney, and I'm going to have my own life, and I'm going to do this." And the doctor looked at me and he shook his head and he said, "Oh dear, you're not going to be an attorney, and you're not going to go to law school. Don't you realize you had a brain injury?" And I know that he was speaking medically, what he was saying, but what I heard was what my dad was saying. You're not going to amount to anything. Because you always talk back, because you're disrespectful, and just disrespectful just by speaking up, even though you're speaking up, not yelling or anything, but it's disrespectful because you're speaking up. And so I heard my father's telling me again, "You're not going to amount to anything." And at that moment, my mom and I told the doctor, "I'm worse off where I'm at now, because I'm not healing. My brain is there was so much emotional instability." So I did the unthinkable. I left home without saying goodbye to my dad. I jumped on a plane, went back to San Diego, and was ready to just do this on my own. Upon landing, I was told that I was disowned. I was no longer welcome in the family. and that I needed to just do life on my own. I tried to call home. The phone was disconnected. I was very close to my mom and my three brothers, so it was, imagine, I just came from a skull fracture, hemorrhaging of the brain. My emotional stability was highly impacted. I was on Zoloft and all these other stabilizers. I find out that my dad has disconnected the phone. I tried calling home, couldn't. My brother was able to call me later that night when he went to a friend's house, and these were his words. He said, Ate, Dad said that he disowned you because you disobeyed him, but he said, don't worry, because your sister's gonna fail. She's not gonna make it on her own. Then she'll come back on her hands and knees begging for forgiveness. To this day, that hurts.
Yeah.
But you know, that is what turned me around. And I went from being a child in a bubble, daddy's little girl, who was always, my world just, my bubble burst. And at that moment, I had two choices. I could just end my life right there and give up, throw in the towel, or I can prove that I can make it, and I'm gonna make it. And I chose the other.
Yes, look at
And
you now.
I went to the University of San Diego that day, the next day, and I told them I'm gonna have to withdraw because I don't have any money to my name.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have anything. And this is where the angels came in. And this is where, you know, if you just continue to keep your head focused on what you're called to do. I went there and I told her, and this woman gave me a tissue box, went on the computer, printed out a new piece of paper that basically said my room and board were already paid for in academics because of my grades, but they gave me additional money for my school, for my books, for everything. And I was surrounded with people that believed in me and just wanted to provide for me. And so even though I was maybe chronologically older, psychologically I was so broken and I felt like I had nothing. But God surrounded me with people who believed in me. And to this day, my vow is that I'm going to fight for every child out there.
Yes.
Every child has a destiny and a purpose, and I want to fight for them, and I want to help these families. My heart is family restoration. My heart is for children to step into their destiny, and there's no age limit.
Wow.
So
Yeah, I love that. Wow, your journey is so unique, and it's for a purpose. I truly believe God knows what He wants to do with you, and your message is so much louder because of your experience. And the people that you are going to inspire are just limitless, especially now that you're going to be in so much higher position. Plus, you're here at this leadership conference. You've got such an audience and so much more to inspire in this world.
Yes.
Yeah, as I definitely can look at you as a role model, especially for the Filipinos who came from strict households, whose parents said, you know, do only what I say, and you did not. You did not always obey. And the thing is that I always say is that if you know that your disobedience is centered on something good, communicate it, be assertive, and express your message respectfully and consistently, so that you are not moved by a parent who disowns you, a neurologist who tells you, don't you know you can't do this. It's such an inspiration. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. And Mari, could you tell us just maybe your one word of advice that you would want to tell the Filipino Americans out there, and actually anybody who is struggling through challenges, obstacles that are keeping them from becoming the lawyer and the judge-elect that you are right now?
Yes, you were created with a destiny and a purpose. You know, Jeremiah 29:11 says, the Lord says, for I know the plans that I have for you, and they're plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a future and a hope. And that's His promise. He knows you before you were even born. He knew the challenges that you would have to face, but you're never alone, even when your parents may slam the door in your face, even when you think it's the end of your rope. He says, no, I've provided for you. I'm going to send someone your way. I'm going to send someone to believe in you so that you can go and be the woman that you are today, or the son that you are today. And don't forget that, because then you're going to go forward and you're going to speak life into another child, into somebody else. We're all called with a message and a purpose so that we can continue to pay it forward. And especially as the kababayan, especially as the Filipino and Filipinas that we are, I don't regret what happened to me. I love my dad, and I realized that what my dad did was a cultural way of how he dealt with things. I have a good story to end this on, which is I went back to see my dad. And when I went back to see my dad, and I said, Dad, I'm not failing. I didn't yell at him. I wasn't disrespectful. But I said, Dad, you can't keep me from Mom. You can't keep me from my brothers. I'm not failing, and I'm going to do this with or without you. For the first time, I saw my dad cry. And when he cried, it broke that mold that was trying to stifle him. And my dad, when I gave my life to Jesus, the first one I shared it with was my dad. And my dad is saved. My mom is saved. So you'll never know. Don't give up. Because you are going to break the glass ceiling. You're going to break the bamboo ceilings for your children. And your children are going to stand on your shoulders, and they're going to go higher and greater. So I encourage you, mga kababayan, let's do this together. Mabuhay. Mabuhay Filipino.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.